Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are getting into a story about one of the wildest cybercrimes you'll ever hear about. This was a heist, right? But the thieves didn't crack a single password. Instead, they cracked something way more fundamental: our trust in what we see and hear. Okay, so let's set the scene. It's February 2024. An employee at a big multinational firm in Hong Kong gets an email from his CFO over in the UK. It's about a secret transaction. Immediately, his alarm bells go off. He's thinking, okay, this has got to be a phishing scam. But then, just as he's about to dismiss it, an invitation for a video call pops up, to clear the air. So he clicks the link and joins the call. And just like that, all his suspicion, it just vanishes. Because on his screen, he sees his CFO, his boss, and other senior colleagues he knows. It all looked completely normal. It sounded completely normal. The voices, the way they talked, the way they moved, everything was so familiar, so legit, that first suspicious email felt like a distant memory. On this call, the CFO, looking and sounding totally convincing, lays out the plan. It's a secret deal. It's urgent. It's critical. And you can just imagine the pressure, right? You've got the entire leadership team looking at you, telling you this needs to happen now. It wasn't really a request. It was a direct order from the top. And the message was pretty clear: move fast and don't worry about the usual red tape. And the amount they were talking about, it was just staggering. 200 million Hong Kong dollars. I mean, a transfer that big would usually have to go through a dozen different checks and balances. But this order wasn't just coming from his boss. It felt like it was coming from the entire leadership team on that call, all nodding along, telling him how crucial this was. Now here's where it gets clever. The fake CFO tells him, look, to make sure this goes through smoothly and doesn't get flagged by the banks, I need you to break it up, specifically into 15 separate, smaller payments. So you see, this wasn't just a simple smash and grab. It was a well-thought-out plan, designed to slip right past the usual security systems. Then he was told to send those 15 payments to 5 different local bank accounts. Now, you'd think adding all this complexity might raise a red flag, right? But actually, it did the opposite. It made the whole thing feel even more real, like this was some kind of top secret corporate maneuver that needed to be handled with extreme care. So, in the end, over 25 million US dollars just gone, sent. And this whole massive decision was made and executed in just a few moments, all based on a single video call. Based entirely on the trust he had in the faces and voices of people he thought he knew. And for a whole week, nothing happened. The employee thought he'd done his job, that he'd successfully pulled off a high-stakes, confidential project for the company. It was only when he sent a completely routine follow-up email to the actual headquarters that the floor just fell out from under him. The horrifying truth started to come out. So you have to ask, who was he talking to? The faces were right. The voices were perfect. But the people he saw, the authoritative CFO he listened to, they weren't really there. And here is the absolute bombshell. He was the only real person in that meeting. He was sitting in a phantom boardroom having a conversation with digital puppets, all generated by AI and controlled by a scammer. So how is this even possible? Well, it's a technology called Deepfakes. Basically, artificial intelligence studies tons of video and audio of a real person, and it learns to mimic them so perfectly that it can generate a brand new video of them saying and doing things they never actually did. And it's getting scarily good. Now, this is the part that should really give you pause. The scammers didn't need to hack into the company's servers or steal any private videos. All they had to do was go online. They scraped the internet for things like public interviews, keynote speeches, and company webinars to get all the data they needed to build perfect digital clones of these executives. This scam was just a masterclass in psychological manipulation. It wasn't really a tech hack, it was a brain hack. They used authority bias, our natural tendency to obey our bosses. They used social proof. By having multiple colleagues on the call, it made it seem legitimate. And, of course, urgency, the secret, time-sensitive deal that forced him to bypass his critical thinking. It was basically the perfect trap. And you can't just write this off as some crazy one-in-a-million thing. These kinds of attacks are exploding. The number of deepfake files detected is set to jump from 500,000 in 2023 to over 8 million. The tech is getting cheaper, easier to use, and more convincing literally every single day. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this: You can't trust your own senses anymore to be your security system. We can no longer rely on our eyes and our ears to spot the fakes. The defense has to shift from trying to perceive the fraud to having a process that stops it, period. And that new defense really boils down to a simple 3-step process. First, just pause. Fight that urge to act immediately just because someone in authority is telling you to. Second, question. Does this feel weird? Why all this secrecy? And third, the most important step of all, verify. Get confirmation through a completely different channel you know you can trust.
So what does that verification look like in practice? Well, it's things like calling the person back, but on a number you get from the official company directory, not from the sketchy email. It could be asking a challenge question only the real person would know the answer to, or even setting up code words with your colleagues. But really, the biggest thing is creating a culture where it's okay to be skeptical, where asking questions is seen as being smart, not insubordinate.
When you step back, what this all means is that a fundamental rule we've all lived by forever has been completely turned on its head. The old way was, seeing is believing. The new reality, our new mindset, has to be verify, then trust. This quote from a security analyst just nails it. All the tools we built to protect ourselves, both in our computers and in our own instincts, were designed for a world that frankly doesn't exist anymore. And that leaves us with this really profound and kind of scary question for the world we live in now. If you can't trust a live video of your own boss, what can you trust? And the answer, it seems, isn't a person or a face anymore. It has to be a process. It has to be a protocol. Because in a world of perfect fakes, our own senses are now the biggest vulnerability.